Welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. I am your host, Joel Lopez. If you go on iTunes and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment and like it, I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, if you're following along on Spotify, please go ahead and follow. Today, my guest is none other than Dovid Feldman. He is helping people create lasting and loving relationships. You can find him on his website, Dovid Feldman. That is DOVID FELDMAN.com. And you can also, he's very active on Twitter at Dovid Feldman. Welcome to the show today, Dovid. How you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
It's great to speak to you. I kind of gave a little background of how I found you. I didn't mess with Twitter so much, but I'm a married man with children, and so I'm always looking for information to how to be a better husband and parent. And you just have a way that is, I say, is very wise, in not only the information that you provide, but also in your interactions on Twitter. Twitter can, people will say, be toxic, and you just seem to have a way like where you deal with people in a gentle, kind manner that is, I think, something that I appreciate. So welcome, David. How you doing?
Great. It's nice to get in touch with you. Finally, I know we've connected on Twitter a whole bunch, so it's a pleasure seeing your face and hearing your voice and sharing some thoughts with each other. So yeah.
Well, so my attraction is, like I said, I am a man who is very much interested in being a good husband and being a good father. Was a lot of your, I would say, influences in just the knowledge and wisdom that you have, that you kind of draw from,
Yeah, that's a
for
great
that.
question. First of all, let me just say I so admire the fact that you're so forthright and open about what's really in your heart and what's really important to you. And I have found that in spite, like you said, of Twitter being a war zone sometimes, um, I noticed that there were a lot of men who felt like that
Mhm,
were going on Twitter and going on social media and looking for maybe some insight, some guidance, or just some good vibes, basically. Not
mhm,
everybody's looking for a guru or anything like that, but
mhm,
just a place where some of their inner beliefs and inner thoughts and inner desires can be validated and expounded upon. And it's just an interesting story because when I first came on Twitter, I had just finished a graduate program in marriage and family counseling. And I said, okay, now I'm going to take all this information in my degree and I'm going to like
mhm,
really share it with the world. And before I knew it, you go on Twitter and you type in, men's issues or, marriage issues. And the
mhm.
first group, it's like typing sex on Google.
Oh,
The first groups you run into are like all these red pill, MGTOW, incel, all these different MRAs. And I didn't know any better. I just started participating because this is where I
Mhm,
thought all the men, the manosphere.
mhm,
And I started participating. And I realized a little quickly that my message that I felt, because based on how I feel, was more of a positive bent on marriage, family,
mhm,
women, relationships. And
mhm,
I would always be like typing in responses and arguing and da 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 with all these different groups of people.
mhm.
It didn't take long before I was literally blocked by everybody in those groups on Twitter. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I wanted to share with everybody and I wanted to, help, educate or help, you know, say my voice and my opinions. And now I'm blocked. And that's when I decided for myself that I was going to kind of just start my own thing and find like-minded men and just create a space. It's a teensy space, but whoever's there, I always appreciate. And I think that sometimes, like, if you get feedback from you, people appreciate the message that I have.
Yeah.
It's space for men that we can, talk in an authentic way about our most important relationship, our wives.
That's funny because I think I kind of had a similar experience. Like
Mhm.
I got married young. I wanted to be married, and then like you had these people who were like, women are the to be used, and I'm like, that doesn't sound like a healthy way to live life. And the Matrix came out. I was a late teens already, so the red pill was like, oh, they're talking about the Matrix, and then it's like, no, they're talking about these other things over here. It's like it was all very new to me. Like there's a lot of phrases that I guess as you um are on Twitter more, you kind of find them, but you'll have a tweet every now and then escape the red pill, and it's just like, oh yeah, there's like these people who think like I don't really dive deep into what like their thought process are, but it seems to me like they're men who have had poor relationships and are upset and angry, and now it's the vendetta or the I just want to use women and let it be that. It's like, oh, you seem like you've been hurt, and I'm a Christian, and there's a part of me like I'm still a man, so there's a part of me that I want to like check people, but there's a part of me that's like, hey, I want to give people grace too. And I don't know if it always comes out in my interactions, but I know in my thoughts, it's like, oh, like I want to make fun of this person, but like I don't know what shoes you've walked through to get to this point. And I have to remind myself that I came from a good family. I witnessed my mom loving my dad and vice versa. I had,
Beautiful.
aunt, I had aunts and uncles who loved each other and treated me well. So I figure they're just people who are trying to find their place in the world somehow to make it. But I still think it's funny though. It's just like, okay.
It is funny, and what I have to say about those communities is that we're all, each and every one of us, and I'm speaking for myself in particular, and then in a broader sense, since I am a man, I'm speaking for men in particular, or men in general rather. But we're all trying to find ourselves. We're all good people that are trying to find happiness, connection, relationship, love, unity. This is what we're always. That's why God created each and every one of us. We all are trying to find that oneness at our source.
Mhm,
And it can be a rough road, and so I don't like disparage anybody in any of these communities. I feel for them. I feel
mhm,
for their struggle, and that's why I
mhm,
write these tweets called "Escape the Red Pill," because
mhm,
um, not that there's no wisdom there, which I have stated many times. There's plenty of wisdom. These are all smart people.
mhm,
In my opinion, the angle is a little off, and it tends to bend more towards negativity.
mhm,
So the escaping part is, let's take that wisdom, turn it around, and show how through the differences between men and women, that's what enables us to come together so beautifully, you know.
mhm.
And it's just a little bit of a different bent bend on similar philosophies. So
Yeah, because I would say that my take is there's a symbiotic relationship between men and women, and in that arena, it's more of a, a taker mentality, and it just does something that doesn't really sit well with me.
uh-huh,
I guess part of it because of my faith, but also I don't want to be somebody who uses people
uh-huh,
in any shape or form.
yeah.
Um, and then so kind of want to transition more towards the marriage aspect of yours. So how long have you been married for, David?
I mean, can I remember that far
Uh,
back? It was funny because I get these DMs on a regular basis. Everybody from It's so interesting. My DMs now. Some people have DMs that are blow up or something. I really don't. I mean,
mhm,
it, people sometimes connect with me over private message, but a lot of times they don't, which is fine. Either way is fine. But in any case, so I got this message the other day from a young man who's been dating just a few weeks, to this
mhm,
a woman who he's so infatuated with, and
mhm,
so he's asking me like, we've been dating 2 weeks, and I don't know what to do. I don't know. I want to make it more official, and I don't know how to tell her and stuff like that. And do you think it's too early? I mean, out of nowhere. I don't know this guy.
mhm.
He's never.
Right, right. Not even commented on anything you've tweeted before.
So I said to him, I said, I'm so I'm so willing to try to help you. But I just want to let you know that I haven't been on a date in 30 years.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I've been out of the dating market for 30 years already, so
Uh,
I might not be the best dating expert
uh,
to ask.
right.
No, I got married 28 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, for me, that's something that I look for, because this is year 15 for me,
Oh
and
wow,
and then I dated, my wife. So we've been together 20 years
beautiful.
plus now. Um, but that's also part of it. Like, I spoke to Lila Tomason also, and it's just like, I'm raising kids now, so there's also the part of me that's like, I think dating is different than when I was growing up.
Uh-huh.
So wanting to prepare my children for what that's going to look like when it's their time.
Mhm.
Because yeah, like, I'm not the dating guy. It's like, you talk to a girl that you like, you ask her out, and then you figure out if she's wifey or not,
Yeah,
and then you either it works or it doesn't, and then you move on. But I don't know if that's the case. Like, the young man that you spoke about, it's like, oh, well, I don't know what your goals are, and
right.
2 weeks is that's not very long.
It's not very long, no. But it's, I like to push young men and women. It's just my bias. So I'm openly admitting that I have a total bias towards marriage.
Hmm.
Um, I like to push young men and women to what's called marriage-minded dating. It's just a phrase that my wife and I came up with, and the idea behind marriage-minded dating is that we date to get married.
Hmm.
So when we're dating, we are for sure having fun. If there's some romance there, that's wonderful, But the goal of the dating from the outset is marriage. So what
Hmm.
you're really focused on, in addition to the fun and whatever else enjoying doing, getting to know this other person and things like that. But in addition, you're evaluating your partner for marriage qualities: kindness, patience, trust, commitment, loyalty, connection, honesty, forgiveness. These are the character traits that are going to enable you to build a foundation of a successful marriage. And so, even though you are going to the bowling alley or whatever, Netflix and chill, whatever
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
today, and I would never want to take that away from anybody or suggest that there's anything wrong with that. Even though you're doing all that, what you're really focusing in on is, is this person a long-term prospect? And
Hmm.
let's get the ball rolling in that direction.
And so, and the people that you're speaking with, is that for them new information or like a revelation? It's like, I never thought about it that way.
Well, a lot of people look at marriage as kind of, I like to say, the mountaintop. So you go on this journey of, you get to, you go out, you seek out a woman, you find her, you date, you get to know each other, and then after everything in that kind of space has worked well, so you put the cherry on top, which is marriage. You sign the
Mhm,
contract and you go, do the ceremony, and boom, you're married.
mhm,
Marriage is like the culmination of this whole romantic
mhm,
experience. I look at it totally different.
mhm,
All this other stuff is just the prep work for the rest of your relationship life,
mhm,
and that's marriage. Marriage isn't the culmination of everything that came before. Marriage is the beginning of your relationship journey. All the stuff that's come before is just deciding whether or not this person is the person with which you want to go on your journey. And once you get married, that's when relationship life really begins. That's when you have a depth of connection. Your souls connect and your bodies connect. You create. You create children. You establish roots. It's a whole other experience. And I think that part is the newness. That part is what is new information for people.
mhm.
They kind of think that marriage is the destination, whereas I always teach people or share with people my thoughts that marriage itself is the journey.
Yeah, it's the great adventure. There's nothing like it, and I think I even though I got married young, um, I think marriage was like the end, because that's what I wanted to do with my
Mhm.
wife. It's like, I wanted to marry her, and then once we got married, it was like, oh, I'm married now. And yeah, like I we enjoyed each other, and but I very much felt the responsibility of the marriage right away, and then
Mhm.
so my focus had changed from now the marriage to like now I have to do all the other things to make sure that this is taken care of. And it's been within like the last 3 or 4 years where it's like, oh no, I've been going on this journey by myself, trying to provide for her, not going on the journey together.
Ah,
And I think that's been really good. And we have kids already too, so there's and they're young kids too, so so there's the added stress of having young children and trying to maneuver and date my wife while my kids are very young and very needy. But it's the best that it's ever been because we're able to speak to each other on the same page. You had mentioned before that it kind of brought something up for me, that the marriage is a contract. Like me as a Christian, and for you, do you take it a step higher and speak about covenant with the people that you're counseling, or is that something separate?
I like to speak about character and a
Hmm.
person's um, desire and personal growth. For some of my clients, I will speak about God and the relationship that marriage has with God.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, in order for me to get a point across, I will bring in the idea that a husband and wife is a paradigm for God and humanity,
Hmm.
and our relationship and the beauty of our relationship is the same as um, God's relationship with us. Meaning, and especially as a man, I like to describe how we play the masculine role, which is the giver and the provider.
Hmm.
And just like God is our giver and our provider. And
Hmm.
so, and just like God has infinite patience and doesn't judge us quickly and is really looking out for our best interests, so too a husband has that same needs to develop those same character
Hmm.
traits with his wife. Tremendous amount of patience, not looking for what we can get out of the relationship, but rather what we can give, being there as a supporter financially, emotionally, physically, all these different things. So I definitely bring in God into the sessions if my client is open to that conversation.
Hmm.
But I'd like to hear from you about what you feel in terms of covenant. That's an interesting term that you probably as a Christian you use that probably more than we do as Jewish, but I'd love
Okay.
to hear about it.
Well, in simplistic terms, it's like you would have like I think about it this way: you have covenant, which is the highest, which can't be broken because you made it with God, and then you have like a contract or a commitment, which is you kind of do it your best, but there's ways out of it. Um, and then you have like compliance, which is like the lowest form.
Uh,
This is just me speaking. Like compliance is like you know you kind of do it out of obligation. There's no joy in it. There's nothing like that. And when you're committed to something, um, you could do your best to make it happen. But like for me, covenant is the highest because I'm basically saying I would rather die than than leave this marriage. And to me, if you've been married long enough, there might be a point where it's like you do want to leave because things going on around, but it's like no, this was a promise that I made, a covenant that I made with God. So we're not going to leave. Because there was actually a tweet that you had, where you said that if there is like if you're a woman on a deserted island with a man, you're going to make it work. And I kind of feel like covenant is that, like,
right.
we've put ourselves on the deserted island.
Mhm.
Things aren't the way that we want them to be right now, but there's nowhere to go, so we might as well figure it out.
It's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful, Joel. I mean, I really agree with you, and I do feel that commitment. And I love how you tie that in with your relationship with God and kind of like a paradigm and like a not a paradigm, but just a complete metaphor using your relationship with God to your relationship with your wife. Very powerful, and I just was speaking to somebody the other day on a different podcast, and we were talking about the idea of commitment and its force and its primacy in your relationship. And something that we came up with there is that you don't commit to your wife because you love her. You get to love her because you are committed to her,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a twist,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It's in those moments where we feel like fleeing, or we feel like giving up, or we feel like throwing in the towel. And I've seen this in all different things. I've seen this with, little things from people just not getting along, where they
Mhm.
just feel like this is it, all the way to things like infidelity and other things
Right.
where people, some people, not everybody, and that's fine. Everybody's got their own journey. But
Mhm.
some people using through the force of commitment and covenant, like you mentioned, are able to repair and rebuild. And in some cases, it's an even stronger relationship than it was
Right.
before. So it's
Yeah, and it's an amazing thing, and it's counterintuitive, right? Because the the feeling or thought would be that once something is broken, that it's irredeemable, or it's not going to be repaired, or it's not going to be the same.
uh,
And I'm pretty sure that there's a time period of great struggle and doubt, but if you make it through to the other side, it's a whole new relationship, and it can be just as powerful, if not more. It's more deeper than it was before, because you've gone through it together.
right, absolutely, yeah. The bonds that are it's just like a muscle, tears down and then rebuilds even stronger.
Hmm.
And like I said, it's not for everybody. I've worked with many of couples where there have been things that were done, or
Hmm.
words that were said, or actions taken, that one of the partners just can't live happily with this other person. They just can't.
Hmm.
They're incapable of it. And I don't judge anybody for their decisions. My job is to support them, not to
Hmm.
judge them.
And that's a it's an interesting take, right? Because you want to be there as kind of a facilitator, to let them discuss things and air things out the way they need to discuss it, right? Not the way that you would want to. Because I know for me, like I want to input my piece into things, and so like
Well, they're
I'm sure that's
coming
a
to you.
struggle.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I have it's a good it's a tight balancing act. I mean, they're
Mhm.
coming to me for a reason, right? They've seen me on
Mhm.
Twitter, they've heard a podcast of mine, they've read an article on my blog, they've been recommended through somebody, and they know that I'm pro marriage, and they
Mhm.
know that I'm have a spiritual bent and that I have a certain angle. So to deny them any of that because I want to say, well, I just want to be an impartial listener, that's not fair. Like
Mhm.
they want me to share the same kind of stuff that I share on Twitter with them
Mhm.
privately, to encourage them in making good decisions. And that's on one hand. But on the other hand, you have to be, as a therapist, you have to be extremely careful, because
Mhm.
what we learn in school is that we're really, really supposed to be an objective, sounding board slash
Mhm.
um, tool for our clients to gain insights into themselves. That's really what we're there for,
Mhm.
and not to inject, our personal philosophical beliefs. So it is a balancing act.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a challenge to do that, but I mean that's why you do it, and so I'm glad you're there for it, because yeah, I'm at the age where I have friends who've gotten divorced, and it's just like, it breaks your heart. And I remember hearing that, the pain of divorce is greater than if your spouse had died. It's like, wow, I couldn't imagine that type of pain.
Yeah.
But I mean, you see that people are, deeply wounded,
Oh yeah.
after going through that. So, you know, my heart would be that people would be able to, get married, stay married, and,
Yeah.
have great marriages. And that's why, I really enjoy what you're speaking about, because you do it with a sense of humor and a sense of humility and graciousness that I think is needed, especially just because, like, I have like a sports background,
Mhm.
and so like my background is always like you got to get back. You got to get back. Like, you don't you if you ever get slighted, then you have to you have to give it back, like
This is war.
with more force. Yes, like you're gonna pay everything you do to me. You're gonna pay,
Uh-huh.
and it, that's not good in marriage. That's not helpful. You're gonna be miserable. Like you might get to win the argument or feel superior, but then the marriage suffers.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what's the point? Like this is my teammate. This is, we're building a family, and I'm mistreating them. Like this is not the way to be. This is not the way that I want my see my children. This is not the example that I want to set for my children. I want to see them see their father honor their mother, love their mother.
Yeah.
So then, I have boys and girls, so I want to show my boys like this is how you treat a woman, and show the girls like, hey, when you're looking for, a potential husband, these are the things that you look for. And I want to set the standard very high so that there's no foolishness that can make its way through to my children.
Yeah. Those are great goals, and I do like your vision of controlling yourself, and that's a huge that's a huge part of what I work with men and I work with myself on all the time, which is, I like to think the analogy that I like to use is, um, if are you is this a home that you have? Is it you a homeowner or is it an apartment?
Yeah, it's my house. Yeah,
It's your
yeah.
house. Okay. So you have outside of your house, you probably have one of these little spigots that shoots
Hmm.
water out to garden
Hmm.
to
Right.
water the garden. Okay. So I like to use that as an analogy for what my ideal man is. Okay, because in my opinion, the ideal man is like one of these outside spigots. Why is that? Because when you turn the faucet on, right, all the water comes rushing out.
Hmm.
The spigot doesn't care what's on the ground. Like you could have a bucket, you could have nothing there, you could
Hmm.
have something which is spraying the water in all different directions. It doesn't make a difference to the spigot, right?
Hmm.
That's the way we are with our character and our love towards our family. We are the water rushing out of the spigot. It's constant, it's ever present, and it's a beautiful flow of water that comes out. But what's really great is that nothing ever stops the water from coming out, meaning you can't stop. If you put your finger in there, it's just going to come out the other
Hmm.
side, right? Nothing goes in, everything comes out. And that's the same way. It's the type of character that I like for the men that I work with to build. It doesn't matter what she says. It doesn't matter what she does. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter who she becomes. You
Hmm.
are a spigot of good character, patience, love, connection, etc. That's who you want to be, right?
Hmm.
That's the best you, and circumstances, meaning what's underneath that flow of water, they're going to change over the course of 5, 10, 15, 20,
Hmm.
30 years. Your
Yeah.
wife is going to change over 5, 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
Your feelings may change. Your kids are going to change. Your finances are going to change. The world is going to change.
Hmm.
What my goal for each man is to choose the character traits that are the most important to them. And we almost all of us agree on the same ones, and build it to the point where it's just a never ending flow. And it doesn't make a difference what's on the other side.
Hmm.
Nothing can stop us from being that great person that we've always wanted to be.
No, that's a great analogy, David. Like I really appreciate that. There was a man I was speaking to, and it was just somebody I was speaking to in passing, and he was telling me about his son, who was like 14 or 15 years old, and I think what he was telling me was that like the son had opened. He was like 14 or 15. He opened the door for somebody, like at a gas station or whatever, and some people passed by and they didn't say thank you, and the dad was like, man, like why did you bother opening the door for those people? They didn't even thank you. And the young man said, it's like it wasn't about them saying thank you. It's just the type of man that I wanted to be.
Wow, that's
And it was like, wow, that kid's gonna be okay. Like he's gonna be,
great.
and like the dad was telling me about this, and like the dad's thought was kind of like my thoughts, like, man, screw you, like I'm doing this nice thing, and you couldn't even bother to say thank you. But this young man had the wisdom to see that it wasn't about them or their reaction. It was just about that this was the person that he wanted to be as he went out throughout the world.
Totally.
And I think that's great with that spigot, right? Like whether you're upset with me, whether you're mad at me, the trash is still going to get taken out, the bills are still going to get paid. I'm going to treat you well. And I mean, it's a challenge, right? Because
Of course.
uh, like I said, I'm a tit for tat. Like there's always there's a score going on in my head, and that's something that I'm not proud of, because it's not something that's beneficial to my marriage, but it's something that I recognize in
Of
myself,
course.
that this is something that you need to work on,
Yeah.
because you want to be good.
Yeah.
How good do you want to be to this woman that you married, that
Yeah.
you would have moved heaven and earth for,
Yeah.
and now you know now you're complaining about taking out the trash,
Yeah.
when before you would have loved the opportunity to take out the dang
Yeah.
trash.
Absolutely. And since you mentioned that you're a religious person and you've been talking
Hmm.
about religion, do you mind if we go that direction
Go
a
ahead.
little bit?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
So and as this is pretty obvious, but it's the same relationship with God to us, right?
Hmm.
God is an unending flow of love, compassion, patience, forgiveness, giving. It's just unending, right? If for 1 second God were to withhold any of these gifts that He gives us, the whole world would evaporate in an
Hmm.
instant, right? So, and there's nothing we can do to get God angry, so to speak. You can't get God angry if God is showing if God's anger is merely like a punishment that's designed to help you. It's not really that
Hmm.
He is angry, because the infinite cannot that you cannot trigger, so to speak, the infinite. He
Hmm.
knows everything
hmm
before, after, and during it's happening.
hmm
So it's the same type of relationship. We want to be like God. We want to have that flow from below, from above to below, of just our best qualities and our best person. And that's how we as men emulate our Lord. And that's how we serve the people in our lives and the world in general. So it's all one thing that we're trying to do.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like I've learned more in my faith walk being married, because before it's just all about me, right? Like I'm good with what I need. I don't need very much, but now it's meeting the needs of this other person, but they're still a full grown adult and independent, and doesn't technically need me. But then my paradigm on God changed substantially once I had children. Now it was like very much what he had spoken about. Like I'm not gonna say I don't get mad. I do get frustrated with my kids, but I'm always thinking of and telling them, like, hey, I'm disciplining you because I want to course correct. I'm not mad at what you're and me, imperfect Joel. I'm thinking this. It's like, so how much is my perfect heavenly Father trying to course correct me, and where is he trying to and so I always kind of look at, like, okay, hey, this is what's going on with my kids. They're having this behavior and they're repeating it over and over, and I've set a line for them to, like, hey, this is the line where it's like we need to course correct here. And it's just like, well, where else are you telling me, God? Where do I need to fix
It's
this?
so funny because I feel exactly the same way as you. Like, that was a huge shift for me in my service of God as well. It's kind of like whenever something negative happens to me in my mundane life, as if life in any way can be removed from the spiritual. It only looks like it's removed from the spiritual.
Hmm.
But um, recently, in the last 5 years, I always say, okay, well, this person spoke disrespectfully. So you're basically telling me, God, that I speak disrespectfully to you.
Hmm.
If I'm being spoken to disrespectfully, or if something uncomfortable happened to me, or if somebody did something that I felt they weren't putting in their best effort, that type of thing, I say to
Hmm.
myself now, okay, I get the message. This is just like they're treating me. This is exactly the same way I'm treating you. And I
Hmm.
take that message to heart, and that's, like, for me, a big part of, insight into how I can be a better person.
I'm not an expert in Hebrew. Like, I believe in the full Bible, so like the Torah all the way through. But one thing that I found was interesting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that in Hebrew there is no word for coincidence. Is that correct?
Um, that would be correct. There is no word for coincidence. Exactly.
And so for me, like, that's kind of how I kind of also try to remember it in my mind that there's no coincidence. So if somebody is speaking disrespectfully to me, it's like, well, this isn't a coincidence, or this isn't just a random event. And yet, like I don't try to wrap my head around God. Like I tried to for the longest time, and it's a if I could wrap my head around God, then it wouldn't be a God worth worshiping.
Mhm. Yeah,
That's my opinion.
absolutely. Mhm.
Um, but I guess you can take those things that are happening in your life. It's like if these things are not coincidences, then there's a reason for it. So there's a lesson a lesson to be learned from the we could just say the mundane regular, because I'm just a regular man who is doing his best to honor my God and to live a life that's worthy of whatever he put me here for.
Mhm.
I guess if that's a simpler way of putting it. Um, but also I think because I'm bilingual, like I understand the limits of language. Like there's things I can say in English that I can't say in Spanish, and vice versa. So when I heard that in the Hebrew, it's like, oh, like there's a way in in the Bible that I'm missing things because it wasn't written for a Hispanic male living in 2020. It was written back for Jews back 2,000 years ago who like were
Right.
in agriculture and things like that. So it's like, let me put that paradigm on when I'm trying to
Mhm.
understand all of this wisdom. And that to me is that spigot that just kind of runs and keeps on going and going and going and going.
Yeah, well, that's interesting interesting idea. There was a beautiful teaching that I learned this morning. I do every day. I do "Good morning, God," "Good morning, world" tweets.
Yeah.
Almost every day, I try to do my best,
Hmm.
um, except for on the Sabbath because I don't tweet on Sabbath.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
um, but they're all based on. Everyone is based on a Hasidic Jewish teaching that I learn every morning, and it's usually
Hmm.
talking about man's relationship with God or some spiritual concept in heaven that's going on. And I like to take them all every day. I learn it. It just takes 10 minutes. And then I try to relate it to relationships. I just take it and take that same idea. Anyway,
Hmm.
so this morning, we're talking about a spigot. It talked about how a person's thoughts, so the person has intellect, emotion, and then there's thoughts. Thoughts are the byproduct of intellect and emotion. And
Hmm.
your thoughts have the power to, that running machine in your mind that's always going, right? That's your thought process. And that has the power to lead you in all these different directions. And when we fill our intellect and our heart with positivity,
Hmm.
that's where our thoughts are going to go.
Hmm.
And I just found that so inspiring because I mean, such a relationship, and of course, it's speaking about the teaching is speaking about thinking about God and serving God, etc. But in relationship terms, it's something which I'm always talking about. Seeing the good in your partner, learning
Hmm.
how to notice, the beautiful things that they do for you, and then of course bringing in positive feelings towards your partner, and then your thoughts. That's what you're thinking about all the time.
Hmm.
That's a big part of my programs that I work with men is teaching them how to shift their perspective from one of, she didn't do this and she didn't do that.
Hmm.
And why didn't I get this? And how come it's not like this? And my friend or this person I saw online is like that. And their relation, the running stream of consciousness that can really bring us down. We have the strength using our intellect, which is to notice the positive things, and our heart, which is to feel gratitude towards those positive things. We have the ability to change our thoughts. And when we do change our thoughts, the whole relationship shifts. And it's a really
Yeah.
powerful idea.
And I think that needs to be a conscious decision to do that, right? To program yourself or your brain to work that way, because I think it's very easy and natural to find the negative, right? That here's the thing out of place. Now I'm going to harp on that thing. I think that is very natural. Where it is not natural to be like, well, look at the other, 9 out of 10 things are in place. Let's focus on that. To kind of, because we all need, I always think that, like, we all need grace. Like I'm not perfect, right? Like I'm if I miss the ball, if I drop the ball, do I want to get harped on, or um you know, held to the coals because I made the one mistake and you missed the other nine things. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to be in a relationship like so I don't want to treat my wife that way.
Yeah.
And I think, but I think very much that focusing on the positive, because you know you do change, right? Like you're with your wife 30 years. My wife isn't the same person that I dated. She wasn't the same person
Oh,
that she was 5 years ago. Like,
right.
and we're, we constantly. Um, I think it's good that my wife and I both agree that we want a growth mindset. So we want to continually, be better than we were um, last year. But it looks different. But I love that, David, that focusing on the positive. It's something that's so small, but it's a paradigm shift in a
Oh yeah,
marriage.
yeah. It was very funny. I had a client the other day, and she was chatting with me, and she's most of my sessions, especially when I'm working with men, a lot of times we get right down to business. They want to know
Mhm.
what they can do to fix it. But when I'm
Right.
working with women, a lot of times, I have to allocate at least the first half hour, sometimes more, to just hearing, the whole story of what happened and how he
Mhm.
didn't do this, and my feelings are like this, and I don't understand how we could have done that, and all these different things. So I'm very good at this. This is what I do for a living. And I
Mhm.
listen, I listen, I listen. And I mean, just a whole bucket full of complaints. So at the end of the 40 minutes, I said to her, okay, well, I hear what you're saying. These are all horrible things. And I can imagine you feeling upset at this point. I said, but you married your husband for a reason. I mean, we agree that there is a kernel of good there somewhere. She's like, yes. I said,
Mhm.
okay, well, why don't you name for me 5 good things that your husband has done today that you could show appreciation for?
Mhm.
You know, totally dead silence. So I said to her, I said, okay, and I've heard this before, so I'm
Mhm.
used to this already. Um, so I said, well, where is he? And she goes, oh, he's at work. I said, oh, so he
Mhm.
works to support the family. Well, yeah, yeah, he does. Okay. I said, well, when did he leave for work? He always leaves at 9. Oh, so he's responsible. He's a responsible man. He likes to show up on time and do his job well. Yes, that's true. Yeah, yeah, he's responsible. I said, does he say goodbye to you in the morning? She goes, oh yeah, he always gives me a kiss and he says goodbye to the kids. I said, oh, so he's a family man. So
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
you married a hardworking, responsible family man so far.
Mhm.
She's like, yes. I said, well, what time does he come home? Well, he tries to come home for dinner at 5 o'clock. I said, wow. So he cares about spending time with you and making sure that he's there for the family. Yes. So I said, he's conscientious as well.
Mhm.
By the time we were
Yeah.
finished, I mean, I had painted this picture of the saint for this woman,
Right.
which was right in front of her eyes, but she didn't see any of it.
Mhm.
And that's like, I have a guide that if somebody goes to my website, they want to download. It's called Creating Amazing Appreciations. And if
Mhm.
you follow me on Twitter, I have like this very annoying, tweet blaster that every other day will put out the same 6 tweets that just to market some of the stuff. And so I have it as a download, and you can see it there. And one of the things that it talks about is how to create, great appreciations. And there's a skill to showing appreciation to your spouse. It's more than just saying a thank you.
Mhm.
And do you want me to tell you what it's about?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please.
So there's 3 steps to create great appreciation. The first one is noticing, and that's basically like the story I
Mhm.
just told you. And that's
Yeah.
the hardest one because, like you said very well a few minutes ago, our eyes are always, managed by exception, right? We're looking for that thing that doesn't fit into place, and that's what our eye is trained to see. And instead, I work with people, or even you can just get it from my guide, or you can do it on your own. But learning how to see the things that are going well instead of the things that aren't going well, learning how to notice. And what's really cool is that once you get good at noticing, you literally notice thousands of
Mhm.
everything,
Mhm.
from a note that your wife put on the table just to herself to remind herself about something later on. I saw that from my wife today. I said, wow, she's somebody who is really responsible. She really cares. She's so organized. She's so
Mhm.
conscientious. She's taking control of her family. I mean, these are 4 things I just said in a microsecond that if I was
Mhm.
thinking something negative about her, these things would completely override that.
Yeah.
So noticing is the first step. The second step is expressing it. You have to let them know that you saw this thing. Wow, when I noticed that note that you put out this morning to remind yourself about an appointment that you had, right? So you're letting them know that you noticed it. When I saw that, then you want to connect it to a feeling, or you want to you want to show gratitude. It shows me, or it reminded me of how responsible you are as a person. I feel so wonderful being married to such a a responsible, capable person as you. Just that's an appreciation. It's a simple
Mhm.
appreciation. You see something, you notice something simple. It doesn't have to be, you're the most amazing woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so in love with you. But you can just like, thank you for taking the garbage out. Those are all of those things are good. But an appreciation is when you notice something in particular about your spouse, you express it succinctly and clearly, and then you attach it to a feeling of lovingness and connection between you and them. And it's really fantastic the turnarounds that relationships have when you start implementing this.
Well, I think what you're doing is now you're creating an environment of appreciation, right? It's like, oh, my wife or my husband noticed that I do this thing. I didn't notice it because it's something that I do, right? Yeah, like my wife, she very much gets in her get it done mode because we have young kids and there's things that need to get done. But it's like, oh, he noticed that I do these things, and I think there is like when my family leaves the house, like I know that there's things that I can't control outside of the house, but like when we come home, we want this to be a place where everybody feels loved and appreciated here in our home because we can control that. So like why not have a home that's filled with telling each other that you love each other, you appreciate. Like my wife what the other day, something happened and I heard her explaining to the kids, and I was like, I'm glad you were the one that explained that to my kids. If if I knew that that was what I was going to get when I married you, like I would have married you like sooner, even though I couldn't because I was really young when I met my wife. But it was like, yes, like this is like I like there's this constant like I made the right, not that I questioned, but it's like, yes, I made the right choice because look at how she treats my kids. Look at how like, she wakes up early in the morning and we'll get there because we homeschool now. So she gets up early in the morning and plans out like those that like this is a curveball. We weren't planning on doing any of this stuff and we're all kind of rolling with it. And just it might seem like a little thing to show that make those notices and appreciation, but I think that's just like the first step. And like I want a marriage that's wonderful. Like I don't like the ball and chain. That was something that I never really resonated with. Like why do I want a ball and chain? That sounds like somebody who is limiting me and my potential in my life. That doesn't sound like fun.
Right.
uh, I want somebody who I can go on a journey and an adventure with.
Mhm.
Like that sounds a lot more fun. And
Yeah,
and going back to what you said about the cherry on top, like that was the end and the culmination. Is like, no, this is the beginning of a journey. Like I don't know where we're going to be in the next year, what that looks like, with our kids and all that. So why not have that strong connection with your
absolutely.
wife to be able to go and handle the storms that come or the joys that come, to share that with
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah, absolutely. And another, one of the great things is when if people do like some of my programs or just even use the guide, if they
Hmm.
start doing these appreciations, there's tons of feedback that they get from their spouse. Like I don't know if you ever see on Twitter, sometimes I post them so people will
Hmm.
put out an appreciation and I'll cut and paste,
Hmm.
the appreciation and then the response. Some of those responses that the spouses give, whether they be a man or a woman, are just like, wow, thank you, and da da da.
Hmm.
But some of them are very, very informative. Like I was working with this one client and I was introducing him to the concept of appreciation. He didn't find me on Twitter, so he didn't see that this is something I normally do. So
Hmm.
he's like, okay, I already know my wife knows how I feel about her. I know she knows that I love her, and da 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 da. I don't really like doing this, but I'll do it. So I said, okay, I said,
Hmm.
that's the homework. You got to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when he's working with me, one thing that I do is I have them screenshot for myself also, so I can see what's going on. unless it's X-rated and then I don't want to see it. But
Yeah, 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 yeah. Keep that to yourself. That means things are going good, but keep at it.
um, but he had sent her an appreciation, something about how she took care of the home or something like that. And her response was, "Wow, I never knew you thought that way about me. I'm
Mhm,
so happy that you're noticing this." And boy, did I give it to that guy over the head after that. I'm like, see, you're telling me with full confidence that your wife already knows how you feel about her, and this is a waste of time, and she doesn't need to hear it again, and this is just doesn't see how this is going to make a difference. And the first one you send, your wife says, "I'm so surprised that you feel that way."
mhm,
It's like there's a lot of feedback that comes when you open up your heart to your partner that you'd be amazed at, what can happen and the shifts that you can start creating your relationships. Like, now we're full hardcore, appreciations, because if his wife is walking around thinking that he doesn't feel this way about her, he doesn't think she's beautiful, he
mhm.
doesn't, this, how can you have a happy marriage?
Yeah. No, that's it's really enlightening, right? And I think people are looking for things to be, I don't know if complimented is the right thing, but appreciated, right? Like that you're happy that you married me, that you're happy with me. Like I think that for women that I don't want to speak out of turn, but I just think that from my impression, they want to know that their husband is pleased by them,
It's huge, for
and
sure.
I think from like me as a man, I want my wife to be like proud of me that yeah, like I made the right choice, that I got a prize, and I want her to feel like I want her to know that I got a prize, and I want her to feel like she got a prize. So it's like it was a win-win. But if you're not communicating those things, do you think part of that might be like cultural? Because I think like for me, like I'm Hispanic, Latino. Like when we greet each other, it's like hugs and kisses, and we say I love you a
I
lot.
love that
Do you
about
think
culture.
do you think some of it is like other cultures, they're more stoic, and so it's like I took care of this, so this is how I love you, and I can appreciate that, because that is very much like you could say all the I love yous that you want and all the kisses and stuff, and then not take care of business. So it's like you missed the ball. So like
Right.
I don't want it to be like when it's. But do you think might have something to do with it?
Totally. I agree with you 100%. I think there's issues of culture, there's issues of personality, there's issues of
Hmm.
the tension in the relationship. I was working with somebody who's like, "Oh, I can never say that." I said, "Why not? Did you not feel that way about her?" I said, he says, "No, I feel that way, but it would just be too awkward now in my relationship to say such a thing." So yeah, there's
Hmm.
all different factors, and
Hmm.
but it's important that we break through some of these things. Culture is a wonderful culture is very, very important, right? But
Hmm.
in my opinion, it doesn't supersede the foundational habits that we have to build for a successful relationship.
Hmm.
So for somebody to say, "Well, my culture believes that we don't communicate,"
Hmm.
I'm like, sorry, like that's not gonna we're gonna have to change that.
Yeah.
I was once working with this Indian couple. It's very interesting in their culture. I mean, it really, and this is where it really came in, very fascinating. I was working with this Indian couple, and so in their culture, the son marries, the man marries the woman, and he brings her into the home with his parents. So his
Hmm.
parents live in the same house, and then he
Okay.
lives in the house, and then he brings his wife into that house.
Uh-huh.
That's just the way they do things there. I'm not saying every Indian person does this, but this would be a recognized cultural aspect of their their race or whatever
Hmm.
their country.
Right.
So, but now, the wife is having difficulty because the mother is telling the son what to do. And then the wife is saying, "But this isn't how I want to be married, you know?
Uh-huh.
And I'm stuck because in my book, it's the man and the woman first, and that
Right.
we for sure show respect to everybody,
Right.
especially our parents. But
Hmm.
we must honor our primary. I mean, that's the goal of marriage, right? Your man
Right.
leaves his parents' home and moves in with, establishes his own home with his wife, and so to her. And it was like a very interesting cultural thing because I couldn't say, well, I couldn't be disrespectful to the way that they
Hmm.
run their life. But on the other
Hmm.
hand, I had to explain to her, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, that it is totally inappropriate to side with mommy as
Mhm.
opposed to wife,
Mhm.
that she should feel strengthened to tell her husband that she's not going to tolerate that. She loves the mother-in-law. She wants to have a good relationship with her, but she comes first.
Right.
That may have been a break from the traditional way. And I'm not an expert in that culture, but it sounded like a little bit like that was a breaking of, culture. But
Tradition.
yeah, tradition.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and that, I guess that's a hard thing. And I don't know what verse it was in the Bible, but it said something about like the traditions of man could make the word of God null and void.
Mm,
And I think about that like in my own faith. It's like, you know, we all have our culture and our history and our past that we do things for, and like I want to make sure that I'm lining up with what God wants. And but then also in other instances where it's like it could be hindering just a relationship, where it's like, hey, my family has a tradition where every, Thanksgiving we go golfing all day, but it's like, well, I want to spend time with my family. So like, do we want to break that tradition that you had with your family before to be able to do that? Like it could be something like that, right? It doesn't have to be a deep
yeah,
cultural thing. It's just gonna be like, oh, we this is something that we do. But I guess it comes down to, well, yeah, how good a marriage do you want,
right.
or what prices are you willing to pay?
Right. What do you?
And they don't have to be anything bad, right? It's just like, we want, there's something not working, or there's something that wants to be improved. So where can we refine it to improve it? Or where do we have to take a step back and say, this is just something that's not working to move forward?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great point. I usually say when it escalates to the level of fighting,
Hmm.
it's time to it's time to move forward because
Hmm.
I find that there's almost nothing. There are a few things in a relationship that are worth fighting for, but so much is not. So
Hmm.
many things that we get into arguments over and fights that we have, and it's just totally not worth it. You know, I have something called the must-have marriage pyramid. It's another worksheet that somebody could download, and basically it asks the spouse to put on like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I don't know if you're familiar with that as a student of
Hmm.
psychology. Maslow had these 5 different levels of needs for like the ultimate satisfaction or the fullness of life for a human being. And I went all the way from shelter all the way to enlightenment and philosophy and religion and God and protection and things like that. So I created one for marriage, and
Hmm.
um, you know, commitment, parenting, affection, loving kindness, respect, and I forgot the last one, but it's on my sheet. Um, intimacy, sex, and then
Hmm.
and the respect. And anyone can make their own if they want. Those are just my 5 my must-have marriage needs. But the idea behind this is that um, we establish for ourselves at a certain point in our marriage, probably a little bit after you've been married, what are the things that define for us what our core mission and values in marriage are. That's what we define for ourselves. So, as an example, um, fidelity, right? For most of
Hmm.
us, except for if you're into polyamory or open marriages or things like that, fidelity, making sure that your wife and you don't stray outside your marriage for intimacy, is probably the most foundational belief that comprises your marriage. Then after that, for me, something like, and maybe for you too, would be something like parenting, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I need to know that my kids are safe with my with my spouse. I'm
Right.
nervous
Yeah.
that she's,
Yeah.
heaven forbid, leave one of the babies in the car when the sun or something like that, or
Yeah.
walk away
Yeah.
from the bathtub or something. There's no marriage. So everything falls apart because I can't trust
Yeah.
this person. The next thing is loving kindness, right? I don't want to live in a war zone inside my own home. Like, we have to treat each
Hmm.
other. We have to want to treat each other lovingly. The next one after that is intimacy. You need sex. That's why we're one
Hmm.
of the core reasons why we're married. I'm not talking if somebody's sick, but I'm saying, like, you have to want to have that, and then being treated respectfully. But one of the nice things about defining this pyramid is that um, not only does it tell you where you should be putting your efforts, so you should be focusing on fidelity, you should be focusing on being a great parent, you should be focusing on treating your wife with loving kindness. And it also helps you determine like if something, a real infraction has occurred in your relationship. So I like to say to the people that I work with, my clients, if it's not on my pyramid, I'm not going to fight about it. So if it's
Mhm.
between golfing and a dinner for Thanksgiving,
Mhm.
does that fall into my period pyramid anywhere?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
Next, I'm not willing to fight about something unless it's actually an infraction of my marriage, my core marriage values. And I can't tell you how valuable this has been. I mean, there's so many fights. I've just been like
Mhm.
thinking to myself, wait a second, that has nothing to do with why I'm married. It may irk me and I may get annoyed, but it has nothing to do with why I'm married here. And therefore, I'm
Yeah.
not going to allow this to destroy my marriage because I want to fight about something.
Well, that's just so helpful, right? Because there's so many things that come up that you didn't plan for, and just having this way of being able to make decisions easier, and even just for your own, like, for you, it's like, oh, this is not something for me to get upset about, because I'm pretty good about getting upset about things. Like, I can, like, that's easy, right? It's like I can find this, like, oh, I can get this and I can be hold on to this and be mad about it. But to have something like this doesn't align with what my values or my goals are, so I'm not gonna be upset about it. And I like that you just put it too, right? Like you might have wanted to go golfing or whatever, but I think it might be in a similar vein. I heard somebody say, like, in matters of taste, be flexible, but in matters of values, be like stiff as a rod. Like, that's where you want to really. And I think that, like, well, do you value golf, or do you like to golf? Because you value your marriage, you like to golf. Like, so is this something that we're gonna fight about? And I guess there is a time, right, to have discussion of like, hey, like, I want to have some time for myself to be able to do the things that I want to do, but let's just make sure it's within the framework of what our goals are in our marriage.
Totally, totally. Yeah, it doesn't. The must-have marriage pyramid does not in any way take away conversations or expressions of desire or even change requests if you want to change something for sure.
Mhm.
But what it does is it just creates this framework. Like these are the pillars. These are the five things that I'm looking for in this relationship with this person. Life can get tough. Life can
Mhm.
be challenges are thrown at me and at us all the time. I'm going to use this pyramid. I'm going to use this value schema to determine whether or not this is something I'm going to really, as you like a sports analogy, go to bat over, or this is something
Mhm.
I'm just going to let slide away if possible. You know,
You had mentioned intimacy, and as a man, like, I want to be intimate. I think of as sex, but I think what some people, and you can kind of correct me if I'm wrong, or you just have a different view on it. But I think intimacy, as I've gotten older, is you want to be able to share yourself with your spouse and like your deep fears of things. And I think that um as a man, you think like, oh, I want more sex, and with that, that's great, like, that's good. But you want to have that person who you can kind of bounce off your ideas with and really share like what you're thinking. Like, I don't think men think of intimacy that way. And I heard someone kind of made a little saying, it's like, it's intimacy is into me I see, which is a lot different than just like, hey, let's kind of get down to business here.
right?
um do you see that where I don't know if men or women think that it's a sex issue, but really it's like, hey, I really want you to see me on a deep level
Yeah,
where I don't show anybody else in the whole world this side of me, but you get to see it.
yeah. It's really powerful the way you're stating that. I love that. Um, I mean, I always like to keep everything true. Everything in the physical world has a corollary in the spiritual and emotional
Mhm,
world. So intimacy is not this or that, it's this and that.
mhm,
The physical joining of man and woman is the ultimate expression of see into me, right? Because
mhm,
especially, let's just say for a woman, right? I mean, you're not just seeing into her, you're actually
mhm.
penetrating her.
Mhm.
right? So when people are craving greater intimacy, it's connected to their sexuality, but they want that level of unity from one soul to the next
Mhm.
to transcend the physical act and to extend into their relationship as well. They kind of like want to be physically intimate when they're not when they're not actually being physically intimate. They want that same level of acceptance, vulnerability, um, loving kindness, physical connection when they're which goes beyond the bedroom and into their day-to-day lives. That's what we
Mhm.
all want.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, the issues of intimacy, and for men, it's just so interesting because if you look at it as a spectrum of like emotional and spiritual intimacy over here and physical intimacy over here, men tend to focus a lot on this,
Right.
right?
Right.
And women tend to focus a lot on this, right? But they're all in it's the same. We're all talking about the same thing here,
Mhm.
you know. And so, I try to like help men see it from
Yeah.
a woman's perspective. And I also, it's getting tough nowadays in today's environment, but I also try to work with women to kind of understand because for a lot of women, they don't understand that if they're more generous in their physical intimacy, all the emotional intimacy will come following
Mhm.
that in an easier way.
Right.
Yeah.
And then for the men, it's the other way too, right? It's like if you're more open, then she's more open to, hey, when it's time to go to bed, to have a nice good night, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think we're kind of running up here on our time here, David. I kind of planned on talking about parenting, but I think this was just so good here. So I might have you come back on so we can
Yeah.
get to that. David, you had mentioned that you have an upcoming Zoom course coming up. I think this will be coming out not this Friday, 2 weeks from Friday. It's just so FYI. So I don't know if that's gonna be like the 20th, I think.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's gonna be in ti is
Cool.
it gonna be in time for your course?
It's going to be ongoing. So if people want to
Okay.
get it, jump on board, or they want to get to know me a little bit better, I'm going to be opening up a an ongoing Zoom masterclass on appreciations. That's something we did talk about today, and
Mhm.
you'll be able to hop on the class. It's going to be limited because I can't have. First of all, I don't know if there's going to be thousands of people that want, but even if there's, I can only have probably 5 to 10 people come on. But I'll be teaching people I'll be sharing with people, I should say, how I've found better to express appreciation to their spouse, and some stories and some laughs about some of the great, benefits of appreciations and how it can literally transform your relationships. So yeah, you can just hop on Twitter if you're a Twitter user, or just come to my website. You'll see a sign up sheet, and you can come aboard.
Very good. So you can find him again. He is David Feldman, Dovid Feldman, Feldman. You can find him there on Twitter, and that's also his website. Again, David, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation. Like I'm pro marriage. You're pro marriage. And I think the world is a better place when we're married and having loving marriages, not just married. So
Awesome.
thank you so much for coming on. This is the